Welcome to Becoming Parents podcast. I'm your host, Jen Taylor Campbell. I'm a birth and bereavement doula, as well as an adoption and surrogacy doula. Doula means woman who serves. And although I love happy births, adoptions, and surrogacy, the pro bono part of my business is in bereavement. I'm here to help you. I'm also mom of 18 children, with over 30 years experience in the trenches as a mom myself. We have a huge blended family, and I've also experienced the loss of our adult son. Remember, give a shout out to those brave enough to share their stories on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell, and today I'm with Roger Pollard. Roger, how are you doing?
I am outstanding. How are you doing, Jen?
Fantastic. I'm really excited about this. I saw that you were a football coach. I wanted to brag to my husband, like, hey, I'm interviewing this guy. You probably heard of him. So, always a good time here. And I'm really excited about getting to know you better.
I feel the same way. I've listened to a few of your podcasts right before we got on, and just love the topic of conversation. And then also just for any listeners out there, just actively engaging in being purposeful about the direction that we're going, especially when you talk about becoming a parent, which is the most universal role that there is. Beyond species, beyond everything that lives, has to have that role, as parents. So it's the most important role I think that we can have as a species, and I think we need to celebrate it a lot more than what we're doing.
I agree. And for me, it's always that balance of how do you take really hard situations and kind of have fun with them or talk about them in a way that's not super negative because,
Yeah.
Parenting is hard. Usually I wait till the end, but because I already started bragging on you, you are a 5-time author?
I wrote three. Yeah, I wrote 3 football books, and then I wrote 2 personal development books, and I'm currently working on the 3rd book in that personal development series. And the aim was just, as a high school teacher, I'm dealing with high school age kids, and they're kind of like finding the main idea in the paragraph. You read each sentence and then you get the gist of it. Just looking throughout these 15 years, are there common mistakes, are there common issues, are there common things that kind of run across throughout the kids on, around that age, and just coming up with something that I said, I want on paper to be able to give my kids a book that's going to help them about who they are. Like we're all individuals. There will never be another you. There has never been another you. But with that said, I think our existence is a product of duality. It's a product of 2 things. Like the most important thing in our lives is that we were born and that someone was there to take care of us. So there's those 2 aspects. Yes, you are a unique individual, but that means everybody is unique. That means everybody is special, and if everybody is special, no one is. So coming up with a way to kind of, I want to say, discover ourselves by looking at what we know out of different people, and that just led me down this road of writing these 3 books on motivation.
I love it. I mean, you played football, you were a football coach, you're a high school teacher, turned author and motivational speaker. And I love that. I love that you're working with these kids at a time that's really pivotal where they're trying to every stage is so pivotal in different ways. And in high school, all my kids, they have some resistance with their parents because they really want to be on their own. They really want to gain that independence, but they don't have life experience yet, and they're trying to figure stuff out and who they are. And what a pivotal time in their lives, So I love the motivation because if we can start with that attitude of gratitude, if we understand that and we're able to tap into that at times when they're going through a lot in high school when they're moving into college.
Yeah, 100%. And how I try and term it, because I teach history, but my love is sociology and psychology, and I try and teach in stories. I try and teach in ways that I can make the information a little bit more salient to them. I can make it more relevant to them by capturing their interest. in how we deliver what I think has to be the most important stuff that we have to know. Because if we don't understand where we've come from, then we're doomed to repeat it. And there are some things. There is a lot of malevolent evil, in our past as a human species. And if we don't kind of dissect it and find out what the underlying ideas are behind them, then we're going to end up doing the same thing, right? There were human beings who did that bad stuff before, and I don't think if you ask them now, do they think it's right? Knowing what we know now, they'll say no. Well, we could repeat that. So, um, giving giving our kids uh, more of an understanding of people, right? We talk
Yeah.
about the education system, but 100% of us are going to be involved with people.
Yeah.
So why don't we learn about people? So uh, in that, I wanted to tell people, hey, look, this is what we know from a psychological standpoint in terms of personality. You have conscientiousness, you have agreeableness, you have neuroticism, you have openness, you have extroversion, and now that you have those definitions, you have an idea of those things. Now I can identify. I can't identify things that I do not know, and this is what we should know about people, or it's a person. And then what do we know about people in terms of how we socialize? I call
Hmm.
them, or they're the five agents of socialization: your family, your faith, your friends, mass media, which is on the rise. I don't
Oh,
want to say mass media, but technology,
right.
and then of course school. Um, what are the effects that technological machines are having on us in terms of the relationship that we have with them? You know,
Yeah.
us having this conversation right now would be a totally different feel if we were in the same room, but nothing
Yeah.
changed, right? Like we're talking, I mean, I guess we're looking at each other or anything like that, but just being in the presence of changes something.
It does.
So
It
just
does.
giving that information to people.
I,
Oh,
you
sorry,
know, go ahead.
giving that uh, giving that information to the kids, especially at that point in their development, right? Because what I tell my high school kids is literally you are at the most confusing point of your life. I mean, and I'm talking about from a practical standpoint in terms of your hormones are going haywire right now, and
Right.
I think the biggest misconception that we have as a people, as a race, is that our brain is in our head when our brain is through our body. And so if we look at how homeos, homeostatic, or how structured or stable, I'll say like that, how stable your body is at that age, it's all over the place. And then what is the number one thing that they are advertising for themselves on a daily basis between what they watch and what they're listening to? And to say that those things don't have an effect is ludicrous, and they do. So having them be aware of it, not telling them to go lock themselves up in a monastery or anything like that, but if you can be purposeful about, all right, I'm going to entertain myself for a little bit. So, I'm going to distract myself purposely for 30 minutes a day. But now as well, uh, entertain, not or educate yourself so that you are finding out new information so that you can grow. Because, like I asked them, are you the same person you were when you were 5 years old? No. So I know that I am changing. I know that I am growing. Hey, what are some of the top fast food restaurants out there in the world? You'll name them off: McDonald's, Burger King, pizza. Okay, do they advertise? Yes. Okay, so they're the most popular fast food restaurants, and you know that already, but they advertise. So what does that mean? That means the information that I put in front of my ears, the information I put into my in front of my eyes, that makes a difference. This is what they're telling you, and that's practical information. This fast food restaurant spent $5 billion in advertising last year. Well, how much
Yeah.
money do you have to spend advertising to yourself? You don't. But if you don't, then do it. What do you want to become? How is it that you want to become that? You'll figure out the how, but start investigating the what. How do you want to grow? I want to be a leader. Okay, find out about leadership. Hey, what do you want to do with your life? As And I teach ninth grade. Ninth graders, look, these are your options. You can curse God at night if you want to, but this is it. You're either going to go the college route, which we've done a horrible job at trying to sell that as the only route to pursue in life. You can go the college route. You can go the vocational route. Right? There's a whole bunch of cars out there. People fix cars. You can do that. You can go into a trade. You can go into military. You can go straight into the workforce, or you can go home on your mom or dad's couch. Those are your five options. You know, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's coming up in 4 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that you're more successful or less successful if you go military. I'm not saying, but
Right.
you have to start coming up with, all right, this is what I've got. I can try and postpone it, right, and not be intentional behind it, but we know that we're growing. What direction is it that we want to grow? And some kids get it and some kids don't, and go from there. But I think it's very important to kind of just map the scenario out for our young kids, not necessarily just, okay, you need to learn math, you need to learn English, or you need to learn.
Right.
No, you're in school to learn how you learn, because the most unique and special person there is you. So figure yourself out, and no one, no one does that. We're in a constant evolution of self discovery, because it's not about other people, it's about you. How do you learn? How can you learn? And what direction is it that you want to keep on learning and
I love that. You are also married,
growing? Yes,
and you guys have twins. How old are the twins now?
they are 8. They're turning 9 in October.
All right, almost 9. So you've been doing this twin life for a while now. And I love you wrote, some bullet points and you said prepare for one and get two, like surprise.
Oh
Um
yeah.
I want to talk about you and your wife. You had a relationship before she was pregnant. And through that pregnancy, when you found out about twins and what that, transitioning into parenthood is tough. I think it's the toughest thing that we go through in life. You think, oh, I'm going to go to college and that's tough, or live on my own and that's tough, or live with a person and marry them and that's tough. Not that I'm minimizing those things, but then you become a parent and you're like, holy cow, this is what it's a tough transition for most people, and you did it times two. So take me through your relationship in the pregnancy and being a dad twin, because you mentioned to me that we're born with personalities, which is the craziest thing before you become a parent. Like that, everybody's born with a personality, but it doesn't make sense until you give birth to kids and you're like, wow,
You
they
should.
really come with personalities, and that you're no longer number one and you have to keep this relationship going with this woman that you love. So you jump in wherever you want on all that.
Yeah. One, I think the the step to becoming a parent is the most important. I think it's one of the most important events in someone's life. It's because I think it was the first time in your life, the most important thing is you, right? The most important
Yes.
thing is that new life that's coming on. So it's a uh, uh, it's an extreme moment of humility, love,
Mm,
joy, anger, frustration.
yeah.
What I like to tell new parents is that you think you're in charge, but you're not in charge.
Right,
And,
right.
you can come up with all of your plans. Oh, it's going to be nap time, and you can lay that baby down. And that baby's not going anywhere. So it's a blessing in that, right? In terms of this thing called life, isn't I don't think we're given life to attain. I think we're given life to experience, to to enjoy. And I don't know how much we really kind of enjoy uh, something that we already know everything about, and that's the blessing behind it. Um, in terms of the twins and the gift of kind of seeing personality, I before my kids could talk, before they could even move, really, when they were crawling, if we had people over to the house, my daughter would crawl over and sit on whoever's lap. It would just sit there and follow conversations back and forth. Where my son, we nickname him Destructo. Uh, you he'd just go off, he'd find some type of toy, and he'd try and take it apart and then put it back together again. So in that, my wife is extremely extroverted. She's a people person, where I'm more of an introverted person. I'm more like as a football coach, just sitting here in front of my laptop and getting my work done. So um, it's so interesting to see that. You know, you can kind of say it, but until you experience it, you know, firsthand, there's 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 a certain kind of essence that's within that. There's a spirit that's within that that's just heartwarming. Um, and then with that, in becoming a new parent, I think we've got to kind of understand that you're not your name. You know, I'm not a fixed thing. I am consistently and constantly evolving and growing and changing. I am doing that as an individual, and your partner is doing that as well. And before you had the baby, there were 24 hours in a day, and after you have a baby, there's still 24 hours in a day. So there's added amount of duty or attention that needs to be paid, and sometimes we do forget to one spend that time in honing ourselves, right? Because if I'm not healthy, I can't really connect or be the person that I need to be to that child if I'm not happy or if I'm not in a good place. And then addressing the same thing in terms of the relationship that you have with your mate. You got to plan these kind of things in. You've got to plan times where we say love is a word, you know, but can you really encompass all of the energy and spirit that love really is? No, you can't. You have to consistently return to that, whether it's once a week, whether it's once every 2 weeks. Really sit down, turn the TV off, turn everything off, and pour into the the activity of loving each other in terms
Mm-hmm.
of trying to express that. Because I don't care who you are, you cannot express love in all of its capabilities and magnificence in any sentence. But we can continually try to do that. So, you know, put those times aside where you do cherish each other in terms of really honestly thanking each other, because in high stressful situations, we are more willingly able to kind of throw out, oh, you didn't pick up, you didn't clean the dishes, or you didn't do this, you didn't do that. We will throw those things out in bouts of anger. So since we know that, what are we doing on the other side of that? I think we have to be purposeful about that in developing a relationship that can handle the stress of children, because that is what it is. You know, and I don't mean stress in a negative way. The only way that we grow is stress, right? Anybody who works out in the weight room, if you go in there and you only do the things that you're able to do easily, you do not get stronger. You know, extract the lesson and blessing from that. So having conversations where we open up, where we are not, I guess, married to the negative ideas that we may have spewed out, is shown by our ability to conversate about them. You know, I said this, and I'm sorry, or this happened. It's like talk about those negative experiences with your mate, so that you can return in love. You know, and I don't like you. I don't love you because of. I love you in spite of. You know, I think that makes it a little bit better, because I'm flawed, you're flawed, we're all flawed, we're all
Mm-hmm.
crazy, we're all on this thing spinning around a star that you know we don't kind of know what's going on. So being purposeful about that, um, and then the joy of having these children and seeing them grow, seeing them mature, seeing them uh, uh, just get smarter, you know, get wittier, grow into who they are. And I truly believe our role as parents are to learn our kids, so that later in life, when they start going through the trials and tribulations that this thing called life has, we have more of an intimate knowledge of their personality quirks,
Mhm.
or some of the things that are just really unique to them, to help guide them through those hard times. But um, those hard times have to come. You know, those
Yep.
hard times, they have to go through them. We cannot. I cannot teach you what hot is through words. You know, I had this conversation with my kids because we're going through the introduction phase. You know, how kids, after 20 minutes of some strangers, a strange group of kids come up, the first 10 or 15 minutes they're acting all shy, and then after that they're all over the place. But uh, I said, uh, I can give you the definition of the word kiss. Right? Do you know what a kiss is? You can define it. I can give you the procedures. You know, into high school, your first kiss and what you're supposed to do. But I cannot properly articulate the feeling of love or the feeling of a kiss until you've done that. You know, there are just certain things that you have to do. So, you know, with them, and the example was, I'm giving you the information of this is what you do. You introduce yourself, you look the person in your eye, you say your name. You want to use their name again the first few times so that you're trying to hardwire it in. So, do you know this? Yes, yes, yes. But when it comes to actually having to move forward into it with courage, they kind of shy away from it. So, um, being able to be a part in those activities through what I think is the highest form of knowledge, which is actually the experience of those novel situations, and you know, and all of those are tied together. The Those experiences that they have to go through, and the experiences that you have to go through with your mate in terms of confirming and affirming and conversating about love, being purposeful about the intimate relationship that you have with your mate. And then, you know, I ask people if love is the strongest source there is out there in the world, when was the last time you looked in the mirror and told yourself that you love
Yeah, right. That's a
you?
totally different conversation. I
Right.
mean, I think that one's hard, especially when you become a parent and you have the stresses of life, you know. For me, date night was always important, really important. And date night doesn't have to be spending a lot of money. Date night
Mm-hmm.
needs to be setting time aside intentionally because you are a priority. And it can be sneaking chocolate in the bedroom and, you know, it can be taking a walk. It does not have to cost any money. It's the intention of spending that time together because it's so easy to get caught up in all the stuff that's happening in life and your kids who should be a priority and forget each other. And it's equally, maybe even more difficult to remember yourself.
Yes.
So I think in navigating parenthood, you know, as a doula, I hear lots of stuff about why didn't you tell me this? Why didn't you tell me how much my hips would spread when I had a baby? Why didn't you tell me? Well, one, it wouldn't have mattered. You would have still become a parent. And two,
Right.
there can be a list of 100 side effects to being a parent, if that's how you want to say it. And I don't know which ones are going to affect you, and of those, which are going to bother you. And so we kind of have to just sort of jump in and then welcome them to that crazy club. And then like you said, once you get it, once you're like, "Okay, thought it would be different for me.
Yeah.
No, now I get it." Like when I'm a parent, it's like the 20-year-old fitness instructors teaching you how to stay in shape. Girl, get 45 and have a couple of kids first and then talk to me about how to stay in shape. You know, the people who have never had kids before letting you know how to parent. Maybe walk that trench for a little bit before you tell me that. But when you're in that, when you become a parent, when you have to share your life with this other human being that you love and parent this child, and you touched on something earlier, like we're still living our own story while we're creating the story for our kids. We're guiding them on that. And man, that's not easy to do.
Right.
And then we wanna love ourselves, and then oh, by the way, you also wanna, like, wipe the dirt off you and the spit up and spend time with this person that you love and keep that alive.
Right.
It's a tough one to navigate. It's a really tough thing to navigate.
It's a lot, but what I try and tell people is this: I don't I don't see us, like, if you look at our society and you take a step back, when is it that we get into the biggest groups um, uh, and gather to watch something. And of course, coming from a sports background,
Yeah.
we go to stadiums, we do all these other
Yeah.
things. But now, if you really look at it, um, the biggest game isn't the first game of the season. It's the championship game.
Yep.
Right? It's the two teams that were tested the most in that championship game. Do we want to see a 100-0 blowout? No, we do not.
No.
We want to see something that is super competitive, super back and forth, and at the end of the day, our team, our individual team wins. Well, then why would we want anything different from life? If that's the thing that entertains us the most, if that's the thing that draws our attention to the tune of, I'd say, throughout history, trillions of dollars, then why do you think that you would want anything different out of your life? So our greatest achievements come from our greatest obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the number one obstacle we all have is a discovery of exactly who we are. You know, not in defining ourselves as it pertains to all of the things that are telling us what we should be and what we need to be and what we kind of are aiming to be, but really more internally discovering the things about ourselves that we were kind of born with. Some of the like why am I interested in some of these things? Why does, because I say people don't have interests have them. The same way when you're mad, you may think a certain way, and when you're in love, you may think a certain way, a different way. I say be intentional about those things in the cultivation of your family, right? And it's about being really honed in. Like we just bought some bikes and we're going on afternoon bike rides. The kids freaking love it. And
Mm-hmm.
I got I bought the bike and there was a pamphlet like this thick on the bike about how to use it, and I just think that's so crazy because if I go and I buy a bike for 150 or $200, I come back with this book. But when we had a kid, there was no book or no owner's manual that was kind of handed out to us. It was just a baby, and we did learn how to swaddle it, and that's it. And I think that's because a lot of that information is ingrained in our DNA, right? If we didn't know how to do that, none of us would be here. So there's something natural about it, and then I say we're the only reason that we're able to learn anything or that we're able to do anything is because I'm able to ignore stuff, right? I couldn't have this conversation if every every single stimulus was going off.
Right.
Sometimes we ignore the wrong things, and sometimes we ignore the right things. So I say be purposeful about uh, ignoring all of the clutter,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the beginning of our day, and really just hone into to your heart, right? Hone into the neurons that are in your heart. That actually your heart speaks to your brain, your stomach speaks to your brain. Be in tune with yourself. I say, first thing in the morning, just saying, having an attitude of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
starting off and getting those hope molecules going, so that now when I turn the news on, because I have to be involved with other people and I can
Right.
see some of the negative things that are going on, it doesn't affect my relationship with myself. It doesn't affect my relationship with my mate. Most importantly, it doesn't reflect negatively on the relationship that you have with your children because um, every conversation that you have with them is life changing, right? Essentially. So being able to 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 move forward with the best foot forward in each of those conversations is, like we said, in the national championship game, we want a challenge. I think that's the greatest challenge that there is. Is every play going to go right? Hell no. Do we want every play to go right in that national championship game? Do you want to see your team run up and down the field against their opponent? No. You want to see a good game against a
Right.
quality opponent, and life is that quality opponent. So I don't know if I go off on those tangents all
Well,
the
I
time.
love the
I don't know
tangent.
if
What was it like for you two when you found out you were having twins? Like usually you get pregnant, you expect one. What was that moment like for you guys?
I. my my wife had she found out at an ultrasound, and she got it, and the lady or the I forgot, the radiologist or whoever it was
Right.
taking the ultrasound was like, well, you have a hot dog and you have a hamburger, so I was like, okay, you got two. And then she sent me that sonogram, and I was in the middle of talking to some college coaches as they were recruiting. They were like, what's going on? You just got what's? I was like, I'm having twins, and nobody knew that we were pregnant and all that other stuff. So
Wow.
it was a blessing, time to start buying two things instead of
Yeah.
one. Everything is double now, and those first, I want to say those first 9 months, maybe that first year and a half, just with the sleeping cycles and
Yeah.
I was in football season at that time. It was definitely very tough. Um, but I said a great thing with twins is that they can entertain themselves as well. So you're not
Hmm.
always the source of attention. So being able to see them grow with each
Yeah.
other, um, helping my son, who's more introverted, uh, become less reliant on my daughter with
Oh,
when we went into preschool, kind of separated them so that she
yeah.
wasn't over there, so that he could really flourish into him, grow into his truest self. Even though still today, I mean, now she's moved on to bossing me around and bossing him around.
That's good
But
that she's branching out. You don't want to keep it
oh
just
yeah,
one.
100%. I tell everybody I feel sorry for the man who falls in love with her eyes. She's awesome, and I love her for it. But that it's we don't know what it's like to have one. So well, what we tell
Yeah.
people is, you complain about the time that you we're like, oh, you singleton, you have no clue. So it was great. I think it was in terms of being part of an activity, it forces both of us, to get up in the middle of the night, because it's not just feeding one, it's feeding both. We want to have them on the same schedule. So being able to participate in that act together, uh, I think it solidified a lot of our it solidified our relationship.
Yeah.
Teams that work their butts off together. They they accomplish together. Uh, if you've worked for something, you'll never kind of let it go. It's kind of one of those concepts, that bond of being able to participate in that. Where it's if it wasn't forced, I can't really say I would have gotten up with her every night when it was when they were on those feeding cycles. But I hated it at the time, and I loved where it was able to bring
We've kind of woven in everything that you do and your family together. I'd like to kind of end. I'm going to quote you from your website. You say, as a coach, I think the ability to help a person find their motive in times of extreme fatigue, both mental and physical, is worth its weight in gold on the field or in the classroom. And I would say in life also. I love that your tagline is motive and motivation. What do you want to end with? If you have advice you could give your younger self or your high school students, I'm sure that's not a super tough one for you because you're kind of doing
us.
it in everything you
Really
do.
let it.
What would you like to end telling people?
It's really like two or three things. One is, again, uh, my biggest message to my students is we get up and we say the Pledge of Allegiance every day
Mhm.
in class or in school, and I think the United States is a great country. Um, uh, Essentially, they're saying that the most important thing that we can do the first thing in the morning is to make a pledge. I think that we should all start off with a pledge to ourselves, right? The pledge of allegiance. If I ask you the pledge of allegiance, I know it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. You know that. Well, if I ask you what's your pledge to yourself and you don't have one, I think that's weird. Just to be honest about it. And if you think that that's a good idea, like right now, when you educate yourself, what you're doing is you are cutting off an old idea for a new idea. A new idea should be able to do the things that the old idea did and more. So um, uh, use the United States or use any country. Every country has an album. They have song, they have a motto, they have those things. Well, what are these things that you are doing for yourself? You know, how is it that you are being intentional about delivering the best version of you during this limited scope that we have? You know,
Yeah.
we love to live as if we're going to live forever, but we are not. It's the most democratic process. We are all going in the dirt. What do you want to do by the time you leave here? And what do you want to leave behind, you know, in terms of your legacy to your children, and in developing a relationship that helps them foster and navigate through what we know are going to be the hardest challenges. So my number one thing for everybody is come up with a personal motto, a personal vow, a personal pledge that is not going to be perfect the first time you do it. You know, the first time you do anything, if you hit it out the park, that means you weren't challenging yourself enough. And this thing called life is the greatest challenge that we have. So, what is your vision for what you want to become in terms of enacting? For me, it's courage, love, and discipline. And
Mm.
how can you bind yourself through a vow to the greatest version of yourself, and being purposeful about that, and tweaking that, and being deliberate about participating in that activity every day, every morning, first thing when you wake up. First thing I think we have to say is thank you. Like, we don't know where we go when we go to sleep. Um, and find out about yourself, uh, and enjoy the process of loving your kids, and
Mm.
being mad at your kids, and being ecstatic about your kids, and this journey called life.
Roger, thank you so much for being on and sharing your story and your wisdom. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for having me.